Welcome to Tech Talks. I'm Holly Scott. Today I have the pleasure of chatting with Rene van der Merwe, the Chief Medical Officer and Head of Clinical Development at Galvani Bioelectronics. Thanks for joining us today, Rene.
Thank you for the invite, Holly. I'm really excited.
I'm so thrilled to have you with us here. Galvani is a quite unique organization, and we'll be jumping into that in a minute and what makes them so special. Perhaps you could share with us, our audience is interested in career development and how you became a part of this journey. Could you share with us a bit about your education and your foundation?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and bred in a very small town in the middle of South Africa, which if you haven't been, you must go. It's beautiful. And I was educated. I did medicine at uni and then worked in hospitals around South Africa and had the opportunity to just work in the UK and kind of thinking I was never going to get the chance to travel way back when we didn't have emails and it was easy to hop on a plane. I came to the UK just to travel and work a little bit and get experience in the UK hospitals. And 1 year became a next and then another. And I started studying in the UK. Pharmaceutical medicine is a speciality. And so I started doing the specialty in pharmaceutical medicine, and I have a very keen interest in clinical pharmacology and translational medicine. So I did a master's at Surrey University and then moved into pharmaceutical industry, really, small molecules, biologics, and spent the majority of my life at MedImmune, AstraZeneca's biologics arm, and had one of the best times of my life. And then had the opportunity to move into Galvani, not knowing anything about devices or bioelectronics, really. And it was really the science that got to me. They showed me some preclinical data that they had. And I was working in immunology at the time. And it just looked absolutely fascinating. And most people have a 5-year plan. I'm not one of them. I believe you should have fun wherever you go and follow the science. And I've just been very blessed and fortunate to be able to do that my entire life. And I hopped on board, and 2 years later, here we are speaking to you.
Wonderful. And it's brilliant to have this cross collaboration in the industry, because for many, many years, the philosophy has been medical devices do things one way, pharmaceuticals do things another way, and biotech companies do things another way. And it's been a real harmonization over the years where we've seen so much cross-pollination and opportunity from both sides being shared. So I could see where your foundation would be incredibly valuable to those innovators of devices to understand with your background and having you come to the team. That must have been a real asset. Were you recruited to Galvani?
I was, yes. I was. It was really a fascinating journey, probably the longest interview process of my life, but well worth it.
Wow. So you were brought to the team of engineers, I take it? You were coming with the medical acumen and the science and joined the team of engineers on the active implantable side?
Well, they had a small translational and clinical side, and I joined that side and headed up that. And what we're responsible for is executing the clinical studies that we have. But part of my team are also looking at the preclinical biology and looking at biological mechanisms of our potential therapies, because it's so new and novel. So little is understood really of exactly how the mechanism works. And it's so beneficial to have a grounded standing in the mechanism, because that also decides where your clinical study is going to go. Mm-hmm. But you were saying earlier on about how different things are between biotech and pharma and device world. And actually, that was one of the greatest learning curves to me, was learning the device world is so much simpler than the pharma world. And it's been a wonderful amalgamation of having kind of, all three of those universes come together in Galvani, because we were a joint venture between Verily Life Sciences and GSK, but also having that pharma industry background from GSK, but yet the biotech mentality of Galvani and our DNA of kind of can do, want to do what's best for the patient. And then the device world coming in there, where you're not kind of handcuffed by phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You can really be innovative and really follow the science and do what's best for the patient.
Isn't that amazing? And that's what's so fascinating for our team, as we've sat primarily within medical device companies and startups and young companies, as we've seen this influx of technology. So there's this intelligence that's moving into our industry. There's also more than ever before the idea of combination devices, whether it's a drug device combination or biologic device combination of some kind. It's creating really unique opportunities for who matters the most, the patient, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, coming back to never having a 5-year plan, that's probably the one key thing that makes our job so fantastic, is focusing on the patient, because we've lived through the pandemic. And if you were ever lucky enough to touch those vaccines, I'm sure, you know, everybody who did touch those vaccines, no matter where on that process, feels a real sense of accomplishment. And I think we're so lucky to be able to do what we do. You know, there's always something different every single day. And the science is what drives us to help the patients with huge unmet needs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's significant, certainly. So this idea of bioelectric medicine, and one that, you know, from the outside could appear to be one of the more complicated, more challenging areas to explore and push product through. This could also, on the other side, have significant opportunity. I mean, some of what I read about it says it could be the next big wave of innovation, especially for challenging diseases like, you know, neurodegenerative diseases and those that affect the immune system. It's my understanding that a lot of the preceding technology has focused on vagus nerve stimulation. Maybe you could share with us a bit of where the market has been in terms of neuromodulation, implantable neurostimulation, and where Galvani fits.
Absolutely, Holly. And that, I think, is so fascinating, because if you kind of think of it as a molecule that tunes something, it's difficult to explain. But from the vagus nerve, if you just take a step back, it's really, if you think of a telephone exchange, and you tapping into one of the telephone poles, and you want to send a phone call to somebody, somewhere along the line, somebody else is going to answer the phone. And I think vagus, targeting right at the very top of the vagus nerve, stimulating there, it affects so many organs, so many downstream pathways, because vagus goes everywhere. And with near organ stimulation, what we've done at Galvani and the amazing engineers that we have developed a really defined cuff that goes around the splenic neurovascular bundle. And by targeting the spleen specifically, it's really tapping into an individual phone wire to an individual house and making sure that you're only calling that specific house. And by targeting this neurovascular bundle around the spleen, we're able to promote neurotransmitters that are released by the spleen. And these then kind of move the inflammatory state within the body from an inflammation driving to more of an inflammation resolving status. And I think that's why we're so excited at Galvani, is that although rheumatoid arthritis is our key indication at the moment, the promise is so wide. All diseases always have some sense of inflammation and autoimmunity involved. And I think that if we can show that by targeting the splenic neurovascular bundle, does have this immunomodulatory effect, it could be enormous. And exactly like you said, it could be life-changing for so many patients.
Mhm. So much potential. As you're sharing the idea of the immune implication and the autoimmune implication, 6, 8 plus potential diseases just pop to mind. There's no shortage of opportunity. And you know what I find so interesting about this space, and in talking with principals like you and your team and those who are bullish about this space, there's a lot of cross communication and collaboration among companies. It's not as, ooh, I'm doing this, I don't want them to know I'm doing this. There's very open dialogue going in on how one organization is going after it and how another, because let's face it, you're all the pioneers of this space. This is so new. There is so much opportunity that it would be silly at this point to get too territorial, because you're all going to be limited, right? It's just unbelievable how much information is out there, and people are sharing drug, biotech, med tech, and the like.
That is so true, Holly. And I think that is what really has had really a change over the last several years, actually, that people have realized that we shouldn't be holding information to ourselves. We should be sharing it. Life is too short to make all the mistakes yourself. I always say to my team, we have to learn from each other's mistakes, and we have to learn from each other's wins as well, and use that, because it's only by that exponentially we're going to achieve what's best for the patient. And at the end of the day, that really is all that matters, not how we got there, but to help the patient is the most important. And it's so refreshing to be working in an environment like that, where everybody helps each other across industries, exactly like you said.
What a benefit, what a huge benefit. And speaking of benefit, you hit on it a little bit earlier, is you are the product of two very successful organizations. I'm fascinated by that. Could you share with us a bit about the history of why they came together around Galvani?
Absolutely. I think a large part of it is our president, Chris Pham's absolute vision. He is just such a visionary, and he was working in strategy at the time at GSK and was looking to see what was going to be the next big thing in not just bioelectronics, but in pharmaceutical, in treatments for patients. And bioelectronics was very novel at the time. And I think when he started looking into it, realized that it can be the future, that not just the future for treatment, but it could also be an add-on to pharmaceutical treatments that we have, small molecules or biologics. And they then came together with Verily, who were very interested in collaborating in this because they had the technology with that, and the partnership was formed. And from that has been a tremendous effort over the last 5 years, where we've developed this neuromodulatory device that is specifically laparoscopically implanted to minimize the effects for the patient, and increase the benefits for the patient because of the near organ stimulation. And the Verily brought the technology of the engineering part. We also had a few engineers within Galvani Bioelectronics, and GSK brought that treatment paradigm of a more in-depth knowledge of the autoimmune diseases, etc., like that. What was really fascinating as well was seeing how these two have huge giants really have come together within Galvani Bioelectronics, and moving forward, where it could lead us. And I think that's what's been so exciting as well.
Enormous potential. Like he shared the disease states that come to mind when I think about autoimmune and immune targeted therapy. It's vast and it's extensive. So I'm very excited about that. The evolution of neuromodulation, in my time, in the 25 plus years, we've seen significant stride in how neuromodulation has been leveraged, has been tolerated, has been proven safe, proven effective. And this is, my understanding, on the splenic side, fairly new. Most of it was more targeted on vagus. You mentioned that this was more of a targeted therapy. And are there advantages to the patient from a user perspective in having that versus a more generalized nerve treatment?
We haven't shown this yet, but the mechanism behind the near organ stimulation is to reduce the side effects. As we spoke about before, vagus really does go everywhere. It targets the heart, the lungs, practically every single organ, where if you're stimulating around the spleen, you specifically targeting the splenic system to reduce the inflammation, where if you target the heart and the lungs, you can get cardiovascular effects, bradycardia, for instance, or with vagus reports of hoarseness, other symptoms of, the laryngeal efforts around there. But with what we haven't seen to date in the patients that we have implanted is that we're not seeing any of those effects. And we're hoping that near organ stimulation will be much better from a side effect profile for the patients, and actually a stronger efficacy effect as well. Because if you think of it, if you stimulating the splenic neurovascular bundle, you theoretically should be able to go to higher amplitudes than you could that have been reported with vagus stimulation. So we're hoping it's going to kind of be a two-sided effect, both better effect, but also less side effects.
It sounds like an ideal situation. That sounds like an ideal situation. So the upside is tremendous. With that, with any new opportunity where we're pioneering a market, there are headwinds. What are some of the challenges associated with being in Galvani today and the charter ahead of us?
I think that the way we like to look at it is really all challenges are actually just really exciting opportunities. They just take a bit longer to evolve and come to a solution. Because whether it's understanding the mechanism of action, because so little is known about neurostimulation in the splenic neurovascular bundle and how it affects the immune system as a whole, or what the effects on the disease will be, or explaining it to clinicians who are used to treating disease with drugs and biologics. And I think that's what just makes our working life marvelous. It's a constant learning curve. And every challenge is just another method of learning something new, because if we don't overcome that challenge now, we're going to be faced with it another time. So I don't, although there are challenges, they just really opportunities to learn.
You're in the fortunate situation of having partners who, especially working with you, I'm seeing this, they're able to offer resources and share insights from both sides. One of the biggest challenges young companies that I work with have at this stage when they're developing something so novel and new is frankly funding. That runway, that long runway is expensive, and clinicals are expensive, and proving out safety and efficacy is expensive. So I'm optimistic with your partnerships and the way you're teed up and the expertise, the eyes, and the commitment that you have, that ability to weather those challenges as they come.
I think Galvani really is a very extraordinary place to work from a number of perspectives, those that you mentioned, but also just the pure culture of the organization. And I think that is one of the key things that, along with all the other 110 things, that drew me to Galvani.
And it's great you mentioned that, because the culture, even in our early conversations, was incredibly important to you and to the team when we were considering a hire, when we were considering an important hire that you came to us for. And you put as much emphasis on making sure that the cultural fit aligned with the values of the Galvani organization, even in its young development, that you wanted to make sure that we kept at front and center. That was as important as the technical qualification. So I commend you for that, because that is often overlooked, especially in a young company, especially in a virtual company, especially in an organization that is trying to hire specific skills. It's something that it may not be emphasized as early and as often as it should be. So that was a smart move.
Well, I think it's so important. I think that's what makes a company. I mean, who would want to come to work and work the hours we do if you don't love what you do? And that's where the culture fit comes in, because if you love what you do and face every challenge as an opportunity, you're going to want to bring your A game every single day. And I think if you don't believe in the culture and you're not a right cultural fit, and there's absolutely nothing wrong, because that's what makes the world a wonderful place. We're all different. But I think culture is incredibly, incredibly important. And, coming from the very top, that culture is ingrained into all of Galvani. And I think that's what makes it another reason to be a fabulous place to work. And yes, it does sound like I've drunk the Kool-Aid, but I have.
I love your Kool-Aid, and it's infectious, because we also are big fans, and so have the individuals that we've worked with on your behalf. They're also big fans of the company and the mantra. So there's a lot to be said for that. A lot to be said for that.
Thank you.
So if we think about the bioelectronic space and where we're at, I know obviously we're in clinicals. Is the FDA supportive of bioelectronic medicine? Is this an area that has got the substance built in to where you have people you can call and get advice from, or is that still being developed as well?
With the history in biologics, particularly, I came into Galvani not expecting the interactions that we do have with the FDA. The FDA, CDRH, has been tremendous and so approachable in everything that we've done. I honestly have never dealt with such an approachable division in my entire career before. It's been so refreshing to be able to know to just jump on a phone call or to reach out. It really has been incredible.
That's fantastic to hear. I know that they have put tremendous work, especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years, into servicing organizations, innovative young companies, in particular with some kind of activity, electrical, software, digital component, because they have been historically so challenging. They're putting a lot more emphasis on that. So it's great to hear that you're getting that support as you move through these new areas of medicine.
Because we paving the way together. It's again, learning from each other and moving forward together to help the patient. It really has been very refreshing.
That's great. What about, generally speaking, it sounds like you're very excited about what Galvani's doing. What trends are you most interested in overall in the industry? Are there things that you're excited about, whether it's Galvani or otherwise?
Well, I think, to me, it's always what about the patient? What's going to make the patient's life easy? And it's a joke between my husband and I, because if something comes up or he has to travel somewhere and he hasn't done something, I think, but why haven't you thought of that? It will make your life so much easier. And kind of my first thought is how to make things simpler and easy. And I always try and bring that thought to, any trial we do, whether it's the site or the investigator, but most importantly, the patient. And I think connectivity and AI, to me, are really the trends that excite me the most. I think it can really transform where we're going. And I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than any of us anticipate.
Agree wholeheartedly with that. I was sharing with someone earlier today that 85% of our companies in the last 3 years have had some kind of software component, whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence or virtual reality or something that has a digital health component to it. And a few of our investor organizations and their portfolio companies have 100% of their investments in companies with some kind of of tech orientation. So this novel new approach is becoming rapidly more of the norm. So again, we're all figuring it out as we go, and it's important, but there's so much potential. There's so much potential.
Absolutely. And, that sadly is one of the things that I think the pandemic has been a positive, because without the pandemic, we would never have made the inroads that we have or advanced as quickly. And I think that has just been, unfortunately, but a great plus.
A huge plus. It did. It advanced us in 2 years, 10 years when it comes to the adoption of telehealth and remote health and accessibility and information and how important so many of those principles are. And those principles are within each segment of digital health. There's so much information that can be gathered. And I think about it too. We see this trend moving from reactionary. We're not going in and treating a disease because the person's now sick. When you have intelligence, you have the ability to make more preventative and pragmatic decisions, and it becomes more of a proactive health measure. So what was more of our reactionary healthcare system, especially here in the United States for so many years, we can evolve to more of a preventative and quality health opportunity for all as a democratized point. So I'm really optimistic. We're seeing the best yet to come.
Oh, I completely agree.
Well, Rene, it has been amazing having you as a guest. And I have to ask, because you've had such a fascinating foundation and lived so many different places, what do you do for fun? What are some things outside of work that you enjoy doing?
Oh, well, my passion is gardening, in particular cut flowers and dahlias. So don't ever get me started with gardening, because and that's what's wonderful about the UK, in the summer, the sun rises at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So you can garden before work. And yeah, I love my garden.
Oh, that's wonderful. I admire that from afar. I'm in Florida, so our gardening is quite limited most of the time. If it's not a cactus, it's or a palm tree.
Coming from South Africa, that used to be it.
Yeah.
I'm making the most of it in the UK.
What a wonderful way to unwind and feel connected with something bigger than yourself, right? After a hard day or before a hard day's work.
And it's just so therapeutic, thinking through things or listening to podcasts or, music. It's very, well, to me, it's very, very relaxing.
That's great. Well, Rene, again, I so appreciate you being with us and taking the time to share all that's magical about Galvani Bioelectronics and where we're at today and the future. Excited to be on this journey with you.
Thank you, Holly. And huge thanks for inviting me. It's really been wonderful.
Well,
and working with you, it's been absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough for all you've done for us.
Our pleasure, truly. Our pleasure, truly. And to our audience, we thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to another episode of Tech Talks. I'm Holly Scott. Until next time.